Welcome back for another message from the host. Kent and I are here with an old familiar voice. You heard him way back when, talking about internet crimes against children. The great Detective Tony Godwin.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here today again. I appreciate being here.
You're always welcome here. Your episode is amazing, and your expertise in that field, you do a job every day that nobody else wants to do.
Yeah, that's the truth. I was having that conversation on the way down here, matter of fact, with a lady that called. I've got some things working, and she's like, I don't know how you do this. And then you remember all these things. Seems like you would want to forget about them, and I'm like, you really can't.
Man, I would hate to be in your mind, because you have a lot packed away, and you can't think about.
Yeah, that's for sure. But it's a blessing to be able to do what I've done for so long and build that expertise. And I'm very humbled and honored to have a department that supports me to do that kind of stuff on a regular basis.
And also the great show Catfish Cops.
Yeah, we're not doing too bad. We're in year 5 now, and I don't know where we're maybe around 150 episodes, something like that. It's people don't know that it's like a full-time job. Like it literally is like a full-time job.
Yeah, they hear me bitch about it all the time, so they know. Yeah.
It's just crazy the amount of time that it really takes. Like I guess when I retire, whenever that's going to be, it'll probably pick up and do a hell of a lot better than what we currently do, because we kind of get some gaps there.
No, it is a full-time job, and then but what y'all do, educating not only the public but also other law enforcement communities on that type of investigation.
Right.
You, in a lot of ways, wrote the book on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys around the country that do this job specifically, do the ICAC thing specifically, and they're really great at it. And I like to highlight all of the work that's going on around the country and stuff. But the education side of it is humongous. Like that's just kind of where we're at now. Is like we've got to get people informed. And sometimes that's cops, Well,
a lot of it informing cops so they can be aware for their own children.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's ever evolving.
Yeah, and they'll run into things, on calls or see something on a call or do whatever, and then, take it home to their family and say, okay, let's pump the brakes a little bit here. So,
my wife's in child abuse, and she is even more so overprotective of Carmen than I am when locked down everything, every kind of electronics.
Yeah, it's crazy. You think about yourself growing up and what kind of parent you want to be and all those things. Like I never envisioned I would be the helicopter parent that I am, that I have turned into. But, unfortunately with the job that I do, I don't really trust anybody. So.
No, I mean, how long have you been again?
20 years, I've been working ICAC alone 20 years, and I just hit my 31st year. So I got almost 35 total in law enforcement. So I don't know how much longer it's going to last. It's very important to me that when I do leave, it still stays and it continues. And I'm not entirely convinced that's the case yet. So
you'll know when you know.
Yeah, and everybody says that exact same thing, and I definitely feel those little strings pulling of like, okay, we're getting close. But the more important thing to me is like I got to leave it intact. It would crush me if I retired and it dissipated. That would be horrible.
Well, that's why you're so passionate about what you do, and you took it upon yourself to become an expert in that field, and that's one thing that led you to getting recognized at a national level, and that's one of the big reasons why we're here today.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm very appreciative to give the time. And thanks for making the reference to the National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame. That was 2023 was a pretty crazy year for me. I received a whole bunch of accolades that year, most of it stemming from one really predominant international case that I had that we can talk about later if you want. But, at the end of the day, that's what I'm here for today is I want to be a representative for that organization. I'm now a part of the board of directors for them. They were very, very generous in offering me a spot on their board of directors last year. And I just want to bring light to it because we got a really big event coming up.
Yeah, the National Law Enforcement Hall of Fame was created in 2017 to honor law enforcement officers for their
Yeah.
Not just for their, you're going to, I want you to touch on, I do want you to touch on that case.
Sure.
But it's not just a one incident or one case recognition. This is for,
right.
This is from a much larger.
It's like the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yes, it's a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the hall itself, it is great. It like sort of formed early 2016. Megan Stockburger and Adam Davenport, who coincidentally were just high school classmates. They went to, I wrote it down here so I wouldn't forget, Cardinal Stritch High School up in Ohio. They're both from Ohio. And then they went on to college and whatnot. And Adam had started, his dad is a retired partner with Ernst & Young. And so they had some kind of program up there for small businesses around Ohio, Detroit, that kind of area. And so I guess with the blessings of Ernst & Young and his dad and everything else, Adam started off doing a annual Hall of Fame award for like small businesses and entrepreneurs, things like that. I think it's called the Entrepreneurial and Business Excellence Hall of Fame. And so he was kind of running that. And I know he told me personally, he goes, I know all the business stuff. I know all the sponsor stuff. I know all the minutia that you do to get that together. He said, but what I didn't know was how to plan an event. I had no clue. And he said, well, coincidentally, Megan, his old high school friend, she was running her own event planning system and business. And so he reached out to her. They kind of partnered up and they started that program for that original Hall of Fame for small businesses. And so Megan's father's a retired cop out of Toledo, Ohio. And he told her in 2016, he's like, hey, why aren't you doing this for cops? And she's like, what do you mean? I thought that would have already existed. And so they kind of learned very quickly, nope, nothing like that exists. So that first event in 2017 was very small, obviously very localized to Ohio. I think I can't remember the number of people that were awarded, maybe 5 were part of that, but they had a kind of a luncheon thing with about 60, 65 people or something like that. And then they saw the potential for what that was and realized, okay, hang on a minute, we're going to kind of expand this out a little bit. And they went onto a national platform. So they, got everything filed, got everything ready. And that's what birthed sort of the, the spawning, I guess, of the National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame.
A lot of officers do 10, 20, 30 plus.
Yeah.
Look at you. And we got one here that's got 56 years on. He's still going.
That's crazy.
Well, and to walk away, and usually, and I've mentioned before that sadly in this profession, you really are kind of forgotten unless, if you die in the line of duty.
Yeah.
Then every year your name gets read and you get a salute.
Yep.
But other than that, there's a lot of people that do amazing work, and they change a lot of lives, not only just with the community but within the department.
Yes.
And they leave, and sadly they're kind of forgotten about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great that you mentioned that, because in 2019 the National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame inducted John the Hammer Drum, and he was a Sheriff's Department captain. I think he retired or left as a captain with the Lee County Sheriff's Department in Florida, and his award was given to him posthumously because he had passed after retirement from some kind of an illness. But they said this guy was like a phenom. He worked for the U.S. Marshal Task Force, and he was a Fugitives Task Force guy. And I made a note of some of the things, because they said he spent 60% of his career working as a U.S. Marshal. Throughout his 25-year career, he amassed 7,423 physical arrests, averaging almost 6 arrests a week, consistently over 25 years. Just amazing kind of numbers. And that's just one little story, and what a tribute it was for him, for his department, for his family to be awarded, posthumously. And so that's sort of really was the catalyst that kind of got things kicked off. And, their mission, obviously, like you mentioned, is to just recognize people, and it can be all forms, active, retired, posthumously, whatever. There's every number of ways that someone can be recognized and honored, and there's the whole process we'll talk about after a little bit for that. But I guess I can tell you how I got
I want to talk
aware
about
of it.
Well, first off, were you aware before you got notified that you were going to be inducted?
No, actually, it's kind of a funny story.
Yeah.
I I received a phone call from Adam, and he was like, "Hey, this is Adam Davenport with the National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame. You've been nominated for an award to be inducted into the Hall of Fame." And I thought I was getting pranked by somebody
Clint.
Clint McNear's like got a voice changer, and he's like just jacking with me.
That'd be a hell of a voice changer.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. And I was like, I even asked Adam, I was like, "Who is this? Like, and how'd you get my number?" And he's like, "Oh, no, it's legit. Let me send you a link to something that you can look at." And I'm like, "Listen, dude, like, you're not going to send me a link. I'm not clicking out of your stuff."
You
like,
thought it was some treasure from Switzerland.
Absolutely. And so we talk a few minutes more, and he's like trying to assure me, like, "No, it really is a legit deal." And I said, "Well, how'd you get my name?" And he mentions my boss's name, like his full name. And I was like, "Oh, wait." Because he doesn't go by his full name, he goes by his initials. And I'm like, "Oh, wait, oh shit, this might be real," And so I was like, "Okay, well, send me what you got and I'll take a look." And then I looked at it and I was like, wow, like I had never heard of it, never knew that it existed. I kind of, like others, I guess, assumed there was something that was out there for that, but I had really no idea. So obviously, once I was able to validate, yeah, these are real people and this is their real mission and this is a real thing, obviously I was like wickedly humbled. I had just come off of getting Detective of the Year for that year. I had just gotten like I don't know what you call it, like a key to the city kind of a thing, like a proclamation deal. Hear ye, such and such.
You still carry that?
It's really hard because it's a big scroll.
Oh, yeah, it won't fit in the pocket. You need an overcoat for that.
The old scroll. And then I also was really blessed through the North Texas ICAC task force. We were recognized as a national task force by DOJ, so we got to go up and meet Merrick Garland in the halls of justice up there. And a little side note on that, I went to my chief because he has these special coins, chief of police coins, and I was like, "Hey, I'd like to get one of these, and when I go to DC, I was like, I'm gonna palm it, and I'm gonna try to do the grip and grin with Merrick Garland, right? Garland PD gives Merrick Garland a coin,
and then do the palm tickle with
yeah. And he's like, "Oh, great idea!" So he gives me one. Well, we go up there, and we get to meet him. We go to this back little area, and there's all these, like protective people around and stuff. And he comes in, and he kind of going down the line, little grip and grin kind of thing. So I'm ready, right? But he has a person in front of him. I don't know who it is, like a, whatever, like one of his assistants or something. And they like tell me absolutely do not do that. And I'm like, oh, I was like, well.
It's like he was trying to poison the president.
I don't know what,
Like you had one of those joy buzzers in there.
It was in a protective sleeve and everything. So
wow.
Anyway, so I put it in the other hand, do the grip and grin or whatever. Well, there was a little kid that was recognized as well, and he did a little drawing in some sort of competition through NECMEC, and he had won. So his little artwork was going to be featured the following year on all of these publications and stuff. Cool. And he was such a cool little kid. He was probably like 7 years old, 8 years old. He was there looking all smart in a suit and everything, and his parents were there. And I decided, okay, I'm just going to give it to him. And so after the ceremony, I went up and gave it to him. And you'd have thought I gave that guy a Mercedes-Benz. Like his family, they were so happy and honored. It's a really cool looking gold coin and kind of has Garland emblazed all over it.
Did he take a bite?
Yeah, he was just gold? Like he really jumped up on a chair and just like hugged me around the neck.
Man, that's really cool.
And I was just like, oh my gosh,
that's
man.
way better than Merrick Garland getting it.
Anyway, so when that all happened, and I got this nomination, and then I was like, well, what's involved? Like, what do I have to do? And they said, well, one, you just have to accept the nomination, which obviously I did, and then the ceremony was up in Ohio. So, my wife, my family, my kids, like my buddies, I had a whole gaggle of people that were nice enough to spend some money to come up there and watch the induction ceremony, which my brother came in, my sister-in-law came in. It was, it gets more, I don't know, like you get this like emotional little tug in your throat or whatever. Like I remember Adam told me, I said, well, what do I got to do? And he's like, oh, you got to give a little speech.
Half-hour speech.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh. I said, okay. And he goes, hey, write it down. And I was like, man, I speak to people all the time. I was like, I think I can wing it. He's like, write it down. Trust me. You're going to get a little emotional. You'll get a little choked up. And so I did. I wrote it down. It was good advice.
How long was the speech?
Not terrible. Maybe, I don't know, 10, maybe it felt like 10 minutes or something
Can
like
you
that.
recite it now?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. And I will say, I give kudos to my boss, Lieutenant John Spear. He's the one that nominated me for this. I found out later. He went up there with me. He and his wife came up there with me. We're great friends. And he had to introduce me. And so he did not know until that night he had to give a introduction speech about it. And so he had not prepared anything. He did not write anything down. And he got up there and I think probably did 1,000 times better than I did for accepting it. But it was nice. It was a good night.
It's hard not to get emotional when you're around, the people that are truly in your inner circle, and seeing you get something like that.
Yeah.
I mean that's very meaningful.
Yeah, it was really cool. It really opened my eyes to a bunch of things. Like one, the stories I heard from the other people who were inducted for various things, courage and bravery and distinguished service and all these other things. And I was just like, man, this is like really super impactful. Like there's so many things, I know now, which I did not know then, they only really award like maybe 10, between 8 and 10 awards a year to people. And I know there's hundreds and hundreds of submissions. So
wow.
It was really pretty inspiring to hear all of the other stories.
Speaking of stories, can you tell us about the case that you actually worked on that was big and actually kind of a catalyst to get you this nomination? Yeah,
one of the cases. It's one of my biggest ones that I've ever worked. It's still kind of very much up to speed and working now. But it kicked off with a young girl who was babysitting a little kid and was online. Everything that took place for this little girl, she was 12, took place over the course of like 6 hours, and that's really very significant. And so she meets what she thinks is a kid online. He's got pictures of what looks like a kid around 16, and the typical things go back and forth. And then throughout the course of talking to each other on the platform they're on, he convinces her to send inappropriate things. She doesn't want to. She does. She denies and says no at first, but these guys know what they're doing, and gets her to do this. And so once she surrenders those types of images and videos, she's really very vulnerable at that point. And so he kind of exploits that, takes advantage of it, gets her to do other things that involve the infant that she's babysitting. And then it reaches to a point where she draws a line in the sand, and what he wants to have her do is carve his name into her body, like across her chest, on her thigh, on her arm. That's sort of his thing. He's a power control, torture kind of guy. Clearly not a 16-year-old kid. And so she has enough. She's like, nope. And he's like, well, I'm going to expose you. He'd found her mom's number. He had all this personal information to get her exposed. And she's like, well, you do what you got to do. And so she basically went and called the police herself. She called 911 from a convenience store and told on herself. And so that started a whole, slide of information that happened. She had to go somewhere to get some treatment initially, and basically I read about this in our shift report, like on a Monday, and I was just infuriated. I was like, one, why didn't somebody call me so I could have got started on this Saturday night? But I started, because she was in a place getting some help, I had the ability to dump her phone, and I got all of the communications and all of the things. And the more I read this, the more furious I got. And I thought, I don't care who this guy is, like, I'm going to find him, right? And so I start kicking off all kinds of legal process, and I get some stuff back initially that looks like it's going to go to Oklahoma. And I'm telling the boss, I'm like, hey, get the flamethrowers, get the sickles. We're going to burn a house down. We're going to get this guy. Yeah. And as we're kind of prepping for that, I get more stuff back, and all that stuff comes back, and now it's bouncing me overseas. And I'm like, okay, is he just hiding? Is he using a VPN? Is he on a proxy? Something like that. And I start digging around, and I will tell you, things happen for a reason, right? And whatever anybody's beliefs are, to me, this was an absolute God thing, right? I started inquiring about this company over in England. Never heard of it. All I want to know at this point is this like a residential customer? Is this a wireless customer? Is this somebody using a VPN? That's all I'm trying to determine. And so I'm on this website, and it's all confusing and all these different things. Well, I find a contact page, and there's about 20 people on there. So I literally do like the pin the tail on the donkey thing. I like close my eyes. I'm like blink on the screen, and I land on a name, right? And I call this. There's an email address and a phone number. I'm not going to call international from the station because I'm like, they're going to flip out. They're going to get some phone bill that's, $100. So I send an email. About 10 minutes later, I get a phone call. I see it on my caller ID. It's about 27 numbers long. So I'm like, I don't know what this is. And I pick up the phone, and it's this British guy. And he's like, Tony, it's Nigel. And I'm like, Nigel? I was like, well, wow. He's like, I work for this company. And I was like, okay. He goes, I got your inquiry, and I'm calling you back. And he goes, coincidentally, I'm a retired cop. And I'm like, oh, no kidding. He goes, I worked child exploitation for 13 years. And I'm like, no way. Like, just the planets aligned, I hear the trumpet. And so, long story short, it kicks off into this international investigation. NCA, which is, over here we have FBI, DEA, DHS, and all these three-letter agencies. In England, they have one, NCA, National Crime Agency. So I get connected through NECMEC with NCA. They start up a whole process. They get the guy identified. They're sitting on his house, and within 2 days, they're kicking his door. And they get the phone. They get all of my victim stuff. And so he's subsequently charged with, 17 counts of all kinds of horrible stuff. And he gets locked up. And so it opened Pandora's box because once forensics are done and phones and computers and all that kind of stuff, it uncovered, I remember the phone call. We did a Zoom call, and the NCA guy is like, hey, we've uncovered a large number of victims all over the world. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, how many? And they're like, 8 to 10,000. And you could have heard a pin drop. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, they're spread all over the country or all over the world, And I'm like, they said, we have a task force of people now, 26 people on a task force over there in England working it, and me in Garland. So I became the point of contact for all U.S. victims, which at one point was around 1,400. It whittled down through some kind of classification stuff and things like that. But at the end of the day, this guy's name is Trevor Fernandez, and he was from India, and he was born in India, and he was like on a Pakistani passport or something, and he'd only been living in the UK 3 months when that happened. He is the most prolific guy I've ever encountered. He was an admin on over 160 different accounts. He had been reported hundreds and hundreds of times, and his reach was pretty incredible. So it was nice. He got convicted, got 19 years, and they are now still to this day, like they have victims in blocks of 50. So they're going to try him. Every time they try him, they're going to until he gets life, because when he got the 19 years, I was like, I had him on 2 federal counts for 60 years minimum. I was like, I was not really happy with a 19-year sentence, but they are doing a great job to further that.
Lining them up every time it comes, his number comes up, gets close, they pop another one on.
Yeah. And so that case has been going on. I got it in 2020, and it's still going on to this day.
How did that feel, knowing that thousands of people that you got justice by picking up the phone and digging deep into this case?
Yeah, it's a lot. It was very gratifying in the sense of like, hell yeah, especially because he was international. And I know, working in this field for 35 years and 20 of those years working ICAC, I know that when some other agency, or other than the feds probably, local agency catches anything that looks like it's going overseas, nothing happens. Like there is a process. It's a lengthy process. It's a difficult process, but I'd say 9 out of 10 times it goes to the wayside. They make a referral, and then that's it. But this guy, I'll be honest, he just pissed me off. Just the way he talked to this kid. But the biggest reward for me was letting her know. And I went to her, and this girl has a lot of things going on. But I was able to go to her and let her know, like, hey, listen, how brave you were to come forward. Like, it's unbelievable the bravery that you displayed to come forward to tell on yourself. And I said, and as a result, we have now put between 8,000 and 10,000 kids on a new path. And we never would have known about them without you. And she, of course, broke down and she cried and she like couldn't believe it. And I said, so, good for you. And she's doing a whole lot better. I don't keep in touch with a whole bunch of victims that I deal with, but there are a few. There's a handful.
And she's one of them.
She's one of them. And, it's very rewarding on that side of it. Yeah, I love the high five moment of knowing, we put this guy in prison. But at the end of the day, it's about empowering these kids who go through this to muster up the strength to say, hey, I'm done with this. I'm turning away.
What was the age range he was targeting?
He liked anything from 10 to 14, 15-ish. Very vulnerable. They're very easily manipulated sometimes.
Very malleable, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you can get what he wants. I told you in the beginning part of that there was a guy in Oklahoma, and what we learned is that he was involved in these different groups with like-minded pedophile types who had this predisposition for kids. And what we think he was doing is sharing his login credentials because he kind of had a target-rich environment. He had a lot of success. And so we actually developed like 22 more suspects.
It's like a network of these creeps.
Yeah, just total creeps.
And just think about how many, so you're saying 8 to 10, 12, how many thousands of kids. Imagine the ones that were not able to lock in on.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to me.
That is very prolific. And do you often see, this is the biggest case and most reaching case you've worked on, but is it common in dealing in this kind of community for there to be networks and international?
Yeah, unfortunately, these guys are committed to building their own, their own little space with their own content. But eventually that content sort of wears thin, and so they start associating with others that are like-minded, and as it goes on. So unfortunately, a bunch of agencies, which is why I'm so big on the training side of it and doing things the right way, is everybody has that great high-five moment of catching the guy, and then the case ends. They don't really do the follow-up that could probably get to additional people, bigger fish or whatever.
Spiderweb it out.
Yeah, and digging in. And I understand because everybody's so overworked and everybody's got a pile of cyber tips and other things coming in. Like it's a lot. It's a lot.
So many lives saved.
Yeah.
But the lives that were saved, there's a piece of justice that these victims, and imagine all the victims that you helped that they don't even realize that this guy got captured.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of those. Like I said, he had been reported multiple times. A lot of people, I've done this as a case study at the Crimes Conference and some other places, but a lot of people ask, well, how could the guy have so much reach? And I'm like, well, it's a borderless crime. The internet is borderless. Like, you can be anywhere and go anywhere and do anything. The compounding problem for him, where we had actual physical victims, was he worked on a cruise ship for 10 years. And so he went all over the world. Like, they work on these contracts for 6 months and they go on different ships. So anywhere that ship would dock, we would find real victims in those places. So you just never know.
No. And he was, he worked on this cruise ship. So he basically just on break time, or when they're docked, he would get off, and that was his.
Yeah, because not all, like, if you've ever been on a cruise, like a lot of people go on these. I've been on several myself. Sometimes the crew stays on board and works while everybody's on the island or wherever they are having fun, but sometimes it's their day off and they get to go. I learned a lot about the cruise industry because of this case, and as a result, they are really good at documenting. They really are really stellar at documentation.
Surprising.
Yeah, which blew me away. So simple things that would be very beneficial on the law enforcement side for us to be able to trace and find, was able to do that because of their level of documentation.
Do you have any idea? I'm sure you do, about knowing when did he actually start?
It was a long time. It had been, I think, going back maybe 9 years, 9
Good
years,
Lord.
something like that. So
It's fascinating and disgusting at the same time. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
weird. Like you want to hear more and you don't want to hear more all at the same time.
I mean, I'm literally, as he's sitting there talking, I'm looking over at Kent's face, and he just has like you think he just smelled something, that, I mean, like.
that's exactly what I'm thinking. Is like
Yeah.
you're smelling trash and you're like, God, that smells horrible. But then you go back and smell it again. And you're just like, oh, it's still horrible.
Yeah, I mean, God, and man, I'm so glad people like you and that do that type of work and
I appreciate
are
it.
that persistent and there probably, I would imagine, many more folks like that out there like this dude.
Yeah, there's so many of them. It's just unbelievable, which is
It's very
which is
sad.
one of the reasons we do our own podcast, know. But it was an honor to be inducted for that. That case was a big chunk of it. Obviously, there was a bunch of other things that were involved with that, but that was kind of the catalyst that kind of got me there. And so it was very nice to be honored and with that award, and have that ceremony and have all my family there to see it. It was really great.
How many were inducted along with you?
I think there was 10 of us total in my class. That's kind of how they refer it, like the class of 2023. And so
Did you wear the little hat with the thing?
no, we just got to get on the stage and do the grip and grin and, get the awards. And then you're kind of tied to your class. So, like, I'm now friends with several of the people who were awarded
That's really cool.
in my year. And, we are always afforded the opportunity to go back in following years, which is, one of the reasons that I'm here today is to just raise some awareness and let people know that, hey, we have a really big thing coming up. And to be honest, like right the night I got my award, at the end of it, I told my wife, I was like, man, this is really cool. I was like, I'm really just humbled by this whole process. And I said, but I want to pay it forward. I want to help this group. I like these Megan and Adam are unbelievable people. Like, they don't make a dime off this. They do this out of the goodness of their heart. And I know they struggle because it's just the two of them and a few people on the board of directors who are trying to get this thing rolling. And so I approached Megan that night, the night I got my award, and I asked her, I was like, hey, thank you for all of this. It's tremendous. And I said, and I asked her about the awards, and I said, well, you guys have to pay for those. And she said, yeah. And I said, well, would you let me or consider letting me do your awards for you? I have an awards business I've owned for 18 or 20 years or whatever. And she's like, what? And I said, yeah. I was like, it would be my honor to be able to do these for you for nothing. That's just one less thing you got to worry about. And she was like, are you kidding? And I was like, no, not at all. And I said, we can talk later and all that kind of stuff, because it was the night of the whole event and everything. And they reached out to me, and I said, hey, can I get some creative freedom on this? Can I show you some samples and give you some ideas? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we'd be honored. And so I did. I designed a very special, specific award for the Hall of Fame. And so that's what I've done. I did those, the following, last year's awards or inductees. I'm doing them for this year's, and I will do them forever as long as I have my business. So that was just one of the ways I could say, let me help pay this forward.
Oh, that is so awesome that you're doing that for them, because I can speak on banquets and award ceremonies from helping with the Cops Cop of how much those cost, and how much goes into setting up an event like that.
It's a lot.
Is there any way you can send me a photo of one of these so I could post when we do?
Absolutely.
Okay,
100%.
I'd like to recognize that.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. We I pimped it. I pimped it out because I thought, man,
flashing lights on it.
Yeah, well, if I could, I would. And I had told them, I was like, man, this is the this is the National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame. I was like, this should have a weighty, heavy deal. You know, I was like, that's a big deal.
It's like a cop doing the Heisman, like the Heisman Trophy. Yeah.
Right.
But just a bowling trophy.
Yeah. So it was really cool, and I'm honored to be able to do that. And yeah, you know, whatever the cost isn't what matters to me. It's I want someone to get it. And 2024 was a really crazy year when I did those. It was the first year, and I'm always like, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, you know, and so I'm like, all I'm seeing are like what I would think would be a flaw, and nobody else sees it or whatever. But there was a gentleman who received an award, a posthumous award, and his son was there, and his grandson was there. Wow. And his grandson, like, I have a picture of him holding the award, and it's like half of the size of him. Like he's just this little kid, you know, really cool. And like I said, he's kind of holding it, which is kind of nice to see, and just how humbled, because he was really emotional and whatnot when that was all being done. So it was kind of a full circle moment for me, but really, really good, really fun. So
you're leaving your mark in that award ceremony.
Yeah, I mean, I hope to, and like I said, it's more out of humbleness than anything else. It's just like, I see what you're doing. I see the good people that Megan and Adam are, and what they want to do to expand this thing and let it grow. And so, like, I just told them, whatever you need help-wise. I was like, I don't know what I can do, but this is one thing I can do. And so they were very gracious to offer me a position in 2024 on the board of directors, which I was happy to accept. And so I've just been like preaching to people about it, and, you know, trying to raise awareness, trying to get more support, trying to get donations, trying to get sponsors. It's such a job, you know, it's just a lot.
I know.
Yeah, I know, you know, and it's one of those deals where I'm so used to hearing no now, which is fine. I get it. You know, there's a whole process for things, but I'm the put my head down through the door kind of a way to say, hey, you know, just because you tell me no, I don't want to have to. I will keep bugging you. You know, eventually they'll cave and say, okay, hey, shut up, guy. We'll throw you the bone.
Yeah. So speaking of support, how can someone support this organization?
Oh, there's a bunch of ways. Let me. I made a bunch of notes because we do have the big event coming up April 11th for the 2025, the class of 2025. But there are so many things. Number one, the first and foremost thing is, if you're here in Texas, because I did, whether I convinced them or suggested, I strongly suggested, I'm like, you guys need to come to Texas. I'm like, come on, we do everything bigger and better in Texas. So they did. In 2024, they came down to Fort Worth, and they partnered with the Omni at that time.
Oh, nice.
And that's where it is again this year for 2025. And so my first thing, as far as like, how can you help, what can you do, would be, if you're local in the DFW area and you don't have anything to do on Friday, the 11th of April, 2025, come to the event. Just come see it. It's open to anybody. Now, there are ticket prices. Obviously, you got to buy a ticket to get there. But they have discounted tickets if you're law enforcement. Maybe your department would sponsor you, who knows, but just come and listen, because you'll be blown away. You'll be blown away by the stories you hear, the way it's presented. It's beautiful. They do a great job. Kudos to Adam and Megan for putting it all together. Like, that's their wheelhouse. That's not mine. But so I would say, just come, just show up, because if you do, you will then say, oh, wow,
I want to be a part of this.
I dig this. I could support this. I could do that. Obviously, donations of any kind help, always help, whether that's just an individual donation, whether you have a company that wants to donate. There's a whole level of sponsorship abilities. I have been trying to get them to think big picture, like, think big. Like, you're a national, ginormous organization. You have all of these awardees who have gotten these awards with all these amazing stories. Like, let's use this to let people know, because most people don't know. And so with businesses, and I'm like, I was trying to tell them, like, think of like a title sponsor. Why can't we have one of those? We can have a title sponsor. We just need to figure out who that person is, or who that group is, or who that organization is. And so there's bunch of levels of that, and they come with all these kind of different perks and tables and seats at the event.
Would you mind sending me that list of sponsorships?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely. And then so sponsors, partnerships, affiliations, like there's so many different ways that all that can happen. And then if you're in a position where you still want to support, but maybe you can't do that financially, like reach out to somebody about maybe volunteering, maybe come to the event to help sit at a table, come, or help set something up, or help do this or help do that. There's,
which is very important and needed.
Yeah.
in an event.
Like even like sending emails, like just playing a role, whether it's you're financially able to do that or not, there's that opportunity that you can do it. And so I got emails and phone numbers for Adam and Megan, and I can give you all that to put out.
Yes, please.
For people that want to play a role or be involved. But one thing I want to mention, if I can, about the event is there's 3 things I want to mention. So in the 2025 class, they are doing something new. And so they've offered up some training because they want this to be and to grow to a point where it's an event. Like it's not just a one day, come in for the ceremony, grip and grin and leave. So they want to like incorporate some things. So this year they've incorporated a training session with Force Science. And so they've given a discount rate for you to come. It's a full day event. You can come in the morning. You can attend this Force Science training, which is fantastic training if you're in law enforcement and have never heard of them. And then at the end of that, you can just transition right into the ceremony itself. And so there's information on the website where you can go to and see that and register for the class, and then also attend if you want to, as far as that goes for the actual thing. Number 2 I want to mention is I nominated someone from my own department, Lieutenant Dave Swavey, who is probably very well known. I know he's very well known with Guns and Hoses. But I nominated Dave last year because, one, I grew up as a young rookie, and he was in a lieutenant capacity there, and he was just one of those lieutenants you just wanted to emulate and be like. He was just a go-getter. He was approachable. He had it all, right? And so I've always admired Dave from afar and worked with him and whatnot. But early on in my career, he went into the gang unit, and that was a unit you wanted to be a part of. Like it was difficult to get in and do, but you wanted to be a part of it. And so what I have mad respect for Dave, not only with Guns and Hoses, because here locally in North Texas, he's known all over the nation with this thing. But what he did with our Garland Police boxing gym, the 9th Street boxing gym, he saw a need for the youth of our community that needed to be met. Like there's just nothing that was there or whatever. And so he started this Garland Police boxing program on 9th Street. And it has grown. There's hundreds and hundreds of kids that he has helped and the community that he has helped. And outside of the Guns and Hoses of what that is and what the massiveness of that is, Dave is so dedicated and amazing to continue to work in the boxing gym arena, and what he offers for kids and the scholarships. And he had all these rules in place, like you got to have these kind of grades. But he not only did those sort of things in place, he'd said, all right, you need help in school, we got tutors, we're going to have a tutor here for you. You need help figuring out like a meal plan, I got a culinary person that's going to come here, we're going to do this. And so he put these kids on this path of just exponential ability, right?
And probably a lot of them didn't have that kind of father figure or influence in their life to go that route.
Right. And so, like, in all honesty, Dave had been on my mind. Even like the year that I won, I thought, man, what have I done? Like you kind of second guess your own accolades or whatever, pats on the back you get. But I thought, like, this guy has done it. Not only has he done it, he still does it. Like he literally was just at our PD last week with a big old mobile trailer cooking burgers and dogs and pizzas for everybody at the PD just because that's the guy that Dave is. And so I was honored to submit him for a nomination. And one thing I want to touch on with nominations, Adam and Megan, they don't pick who gets in. There's an independent group of people. Some of them are past winners. I know because I did that for the 2024 group. There were hundreds of submissions. Like, these stories come in and you're like, holy smokes, like, how am I going to get through this? Because they all sound amazing.
It's like finding a diamond in a stack of diamonds.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And so it's a process. And so when I submitted Dave, I was not on that committee, obviously, and I submitted that, and thank God he was picked. So Dave Swavey will be inducted in the 2025 class. Very, very cool honor. It was really great. I got to go and tell him. He was actually at I think a birthday thing or something through Guns N' Hoses, and was kind of a Christmassy thing. And he had no idea I was coming, and I kind of coordinated through his family. And I showed up at this restaurant where he and a bunch of family were, and they were having a big Guns N' Hoses party. And I kind of came up, and there he is with a Santa Claus hat on. And I told my daughter and my wife who were with me, I was like, hey, make sure you video this, and so I could send it to Megan and Adam. And I get to announce it, and I give them the save the date thing, and I say, hey, I just want to let you know that how much I respect you, and I put you in for this award, and you've been accepted. If you'll accept the nomination, then you'll be inducted in the 25 class. And he just started crying, and it was like a really cool moment. I just have mad respect for him, and I'm super proud that he's going to be inducted into this class. So that's number 2, and I swear I'm almost done. Number 3, there is a big old raffle. I can send you this. This is the law enforcement edition of the Henry rifle. It's really super cool looking. This is just a raffle we got going on. This will be at the event. There are tickets that you can purchase online if you are interested. $25 for a chance to win this Henry rifle.
Yes, please send me a digital copy of that.
I will do that. And then for entertainment at the show this year, they have Deputy Sheriff, Nashville recording artist Chris Darlington, who's going to be doing some singing and play some of his songs. And my daughter, Jordan Godwin, will be doing the national anthem this year at the ceremony, which I'm super proud of. She was able to do the national anthem at the Crimes Against Children conference, which was like unbelievable. If anybody's out there that went to that, it was pretty tremendous. And I've heard her do it so many times, so I'm sort of biased. I understand she's my kid. But man, my girl can sing. She is a rock star. And she did a rendition at the Crimes conference that just made people blubber, like me included, right? And so I told her, I was like, hey, big stage here for the National Hall of Fame. I was like, you're going to have to do it like you did there. But who knows? She'll probably tweak it and do something else. But again, the training, I'll send you all these things electronically. And if you help us spread the word about that would be pretty tremendous, man.
No, absolutely. No, it's I'm glad you reached out to me to meet up today, and I'm sad that Megan and Adam cannot be here.
They are too. They were texting this morning saying, man, you're going to do great. They're so encouraging, and
well, yeah, I was telling Kent before we sat down for this recording, I said, this is going to be an easy edit because he's been on the mic longer than we have.
Oh, well.
And no, this is to get recognized in this profession, and it's not the easiest thing to do. And some people go their whole career and do amazing work, and they touch a lot of lives, and
yeah,
and people don't do it to get awards,
right?
But it is nice to get a pat on the back.
It is. It really is. It's sometimes this career can be thankless, and it's so encouraging to me to have 2 civilians from Ohio, Megan and Adam, who, I mean, Megan is tied obviously with a law enforcement background with her dad, who's a great guy, but for no other reason than to just say it's the right thing to do. Like, we should be recognizing law enforcement around the nation, and they have big dreams and big ideas, as do I. Like, my big long-term goal is for them to have an actual brick and mortar building, like, hey, where people can come and see and look at the stories and the pictures and all these sort of things. And so, yeah, I'm thinking big for them, and I'm hopeful, that at some point that's going to happen. And I want it to be right here in Texas. Like, I got them to come down here and do the ceremony for 2 years, so I'm hoping it's going to stay down here, and maybe I'm biased on that, but
No, I like the thought that it's going to be here.
Yeah, and they are a 501c3. I need to make sure I mention that. Anybody that does have some idea of donating, we are they are accepting things, obviously, still through any kind of donations. But the nominations for 2026 are now open. You can go to the National Law Enforcement Officer Hall of Fame website, and there's just a button you click on, nomination, and you can just start filling it out. And let's get these cops around the country the accolades they deserve.
A lot of heroes out there.
Oh, 100%. And I appreciate you guys' time.
Oh yeah, well, I appreciate what you're doing, supporting this organization. I appreciate Megan and Adam for basically serving those who serve.
Yeah, 100%.
So, I got a final question to wrap
Sure.
this up. I want you. I mean, you've done a lot in your career, and you're still actually building that. You don't have a finished product yet,
Right.
and you've done so much. Just this one case alone, there's thousands of cases you've done in over 2 decades. Your family that showed up.
Yeah.
Can you speak to them?
Yeah. Listen, every guy and gal that I know that do this job would not be able to do it without their significant others and their family, right? I am uniquely blessed to have the wife that I have. My wife works for the PD. She's not a cop, but she works for the PD. My youngest daughter works for the PD. But my family in general, I could not be the success that I am without them 100%, because they support everything that I do. They back me up when I need to be backed up. They put me in check when I need to be put in check, which is probably more often than not. I'm blessed. I have the best family out there. And I know any person that sits behind this mic would have the same thought process about their family, but mine's way better. And, at the end of the day, I have 3 adult daughters and 1 son who's creeping up on 17. And my wife, Robin, I love her to the moon and back. She does more for me than I can ever pay her back for. And I don't deserve that. But luckily, we stay very grounded as a family. And so it's important to put that on a pedestal. If you're a young cop and you're listening and you're going through your career, unfortunately, we see a lot of terrible things, and unfortunately, we don't translate that well to our families, which sometimes causes families to fracture. And don't let that happen. Be smart. Put your family on a pedestal. They deserve to be on that pedestal because they probably support you far more than you give them credit for. So make sure they're aware of that.
Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run. Up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I will never give up on you.